Hello folks, welcome to el canal de Chano Jose. Today we're going to give you some tips on how to choose a used motor at a junkyard. And sometimes it's really complicated because we don't know the conditions of that motor and we don't know what the motor has gone through. So the head on your car might be bad or the whole motor is ruined that you need to go to a junkyard and find one. And for example, you find one, but how can you tell if it's good? So we're going to give you some pointers and some tips that hopefully can help you and you can add to your experience, so that way you can make a good decision on buying the motor if you think it's good or you think it's bad. Because at a junkyard we don't have the option that we can turn on the car and hear the engine and see if it's knocking or if it has some weird noises. So what we have to look for visually is some pointers that is going to help us and see if we buy the engine or we don't buy it. And also you cannot turn on the ignition to see if it has a lot of miles or low miles. So it's really critical that you look for some stuff. And with that said, let's get started. So you get to the junkyard and you find the car that you're looking for, and then the engine is still in there and nobody has touched it. So you want to find out how you can trust that engine is in good shape, and this is what you check for. So now you look at the car and it has a big hit on the rear, and now that's telling you that this is why this car ended up in the junkyard. This is an indication that the motor, it might still be in good shape because this car is here because of that hit. And if it was complete like other cars, then you'll be asking yourself, why is that car in the junkyard? But this one is here because of that damage in the back. So that's an indication that motor might be good. Another indication that could be that this motor is good is that look for any ruptured hoses or any liquid that can show trace of coolant or broken radiator, that it could be an overheated engine. And that way you don't want to buy that engine because there's ruptured hoses or anything that is showing that they might be in liquid over the engine, and that's might giving you a sign that it was overheated engine. The sign that we're looking for is this coolant spillage all over the side of the cap of the radiator, and that's telling you that radiator overheated and that coolant just spilled all over the place. That's an indication that might be in an overheated engine. So another indication if the motor is good or bad, if the hit is in the front, you want to always verify that frame or that car did not hit the motor. So as you're looking for the components, this car was hit on the front and insurance made a salvage, so it ended up in the junkyard. So now you might end up pulling this motor, but you gotta inspect that no components are broken off or broken, so it can affect the engine performance, because it might crack the block or something like that and you don't know, and you take this off and then you realize that block was no good. So you want to start by inspecting the motor before you start taking it off, because your time consuming on taking it off and you find out that it's no good. Another thing that you can do is, once you get to the motor, and then for example this one that is exposed, if you have the way to take the spark plugs out, and then you can feed those new components or cameras that you can look inside, and you can look into the cylinder and see if there's scratch or what conditions that cylinder is on. So that way you can decide if you want to buy the engine or you don't want to buy the engine, and that way you can see if it has coolant or oil into the cylinder. That way you can verify, you can get an idea of the compression or blown head gasket. So another thing that you can do is that you want to make sure that all the components are there, because otherwise you'll be buying just a piece of metal, and when you could have just bought a nice complete engine, now you're just buying half of the engine for the price of a full engine. And if that engine is being exposed to the weather, like the valves, now you're buying all that, and now you got to take this apart, make sure it's clean, and then put it back on, and that's going to be more work. And another thing is that when you're buying an engine, you want to make sure that engine is compatible with your car. If otherwise, you'd end up with an engine that is not going to be any good for your car because it didn't fit. So you want to make sure, not because it's BMW or that brand is going to fit, you want to make sure you buy the engine that fits your car, and that way you don't end up spending money on a useless engine that is working but it doesn't fit your car. So another thing you can do is you can take the valve cover off to verify what conditions the oil is. If it's a milky or is pure oil, that can give you a sign of if there's oil mixed with the antifreeze, and that's gonna tell you that the head gasket has been blown and is mixed the coolant with the oil. So that's a quick scenario that you can take off the valve cover to verify it on that just by looking at the oil. So another thing that you can do to make sure that you're getting a good engine from the junkyard is that you can take the spark plugs off, and then you can rotate the motor from the crankshaft pulley and try to spin it a few times and see if it doesn't bond anywhere. So that way you take the spark plugs off and you don't create any compression, and you are able to spin the motor. So another thing you can do is you can take the upper timing belt cover off and see if the belt has broken, or the chain. And if the chain or the belt are broken, then you might have a bent valves or broken pistons, or some interference was created. So you want to make sure that if the belt is still there and is on, it might be a healthy engine as well. For example, folks, this one has a broken timing belt. So if you don't inspect this and there's a broken timing belt, that can be a damaged engine, because the valves and the pistons got interference into each other, and you might be taking home a broken engine. Just you couldn't avoid that just by looking at the timing belt that is broken, so you don't take that engine home, and when you open it or you try to make it run, you get a surprise as well. And well, folks, hopefully this video was useful and has some good information that you can use towards your next purchase on a used engine. And it's really hard to get a really good low mileage engine at a junkyard, but you can look for some of these pointers and then add it to your experience, and hopefully you can make the good decision, the good choice on purchasing or not purchasing that engine. Because remember, at a junkyard, we cannot just open the engine and look what's inside and how well or how good the components are, because it's going to take us a lot of time, and we're time limited when we're doing this kind of purchases. So also, you cannot turn on the car, and then you cannot look at the low mileage or high mileage on the dash, because they're digital display and it's hard. We have to make critical choices so we can spend some money or not spend some money on that engine. So engines are pretty much the heart of the car. So that's why it's really hard to buy an engine than when it's in a junkyard, because we don't know why the car ended on the junkyard. But by following some of these pointers, you can make the best choice if you want to purchase it. So for those viewers who are watching our video and haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe. If you like our video, give us thumbs up, share it, and we'll see you soon with more videos here in el canal El Chano Jose.